This episode of Who Thought We'd Be Here is brought to you by Joker Ink Apparel Decorating Company, your ultimate destination for screen printing, embroidery, and full-color digital printing. Whether it's bold apparel that makes heads turn or promotional swag that leaves a mark, we've got the expertise to make your vision come alive. And the best part, we handle orders from just one piece to a whopping 1 million. No project is too big or too small. With Joker Ink, your imagination is the limit. Our skilled team ensures every design pops with vibrancy, while our state-of-the-art technology guarantees precision and quality. Ready to make your brand unforgettable? Call us now at 845-863-3460 or visit jokerink.com. That's JOKERINK.com. Joker Ink, where creativity meets limitless possibilities. Get noticed, get remembered. Contact Joker Ink today at 845-863-3460 or visit www.jokerink.com.
Don't work, I take a second to breathe, yeah. Breathe in, breathe out. Couple rain clouds ain't gonna get me down. I said, breathe in, breathe out. I'm getting back to me. All the things I do, all the things I say, all the times I took a chance, all of the mistakes I made.
That's a cool episode,
Yeah.
Well. We find ourselves here again.
Yeah. This is episode
Trying to
30.
Yeah. Yeah. Which it hasn't been 52 weeks, has it? I'll have to look at that. I'll look at it right now. I have
like
a laptop in front of me. Like when our first episode.
I think it came out August 16th, if I'm correct.
Okay.
Which would make us a little bit ahead of a year. So 30 episodes in the first year of this podcast.
Yeah. It just says August 2023. Maybe I'm sure you could figure it out in the whatchamacallit.
Yeah. Either way, guys, this is our 30th episode. Yeah. And it's still the first year of this podcast, technically.
Yeah.
We just put out an episode today as we're recording this. It was episode 28.
Yeah.
That was from a little bit over a month ago, or right around a month.
Yeah, it was like the middle of June.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit older. We have episode 29 in the barrel.
Yeah, we're going to try to have our episodes be more current and up to date. Because I feel like it can be confusing if you're... Because even in just that month, a lot changed, and then people, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, but people listen to it, and it's like, we recorded it that day, and it's never that soon, you know? But we're going to try to work on having it to be a little more current, within the week, right? I think
I think, like you said before when we were sitting down, when you first got here, once we record, we'll start at least getting the video synced up and ready to go. Yeah. This way, when we're ready and we have time, we don't have to rush it or force it, but when we have the time, we already have the video right there, and then we can clip it up. This way you guys can have some content, because we've been really lacking in that.
Yeah, no, and I think we'll feel more accomplished kind of doing it that way too. Yeah. Because it's instead of it being oh, there's more work to do, and you have to kind of go back, you can kind of be present and just do that right there. Right in the middle.
So 30 episodes in the first year. We might be able to squeeze out
if we're
32.
The secret.
32 or 33. But so how many do you think we can get in year 2 of this?
I feel like it's a totally fair goal to just say we can do more than the 32 that we did in the first year.
Yeah, we missed 1 month. You said it was just June. That was the only month that we didn't put out an episode.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think we were both going through a lot, and a lot was changing, so it was very hard to sit there and take the time to do this. But now that we're a little bit further along,
but I think you and I needed some time to reconnect as friends and look, you know what I mean? Because when it was we always talk about how it can be tough to figure out what do you want to talk about in the podcast, what's okay, and even the last episode that'll come out within the next couple of days was I'd rather take a step back in terms of what we're talking about and talk to you as just my friend and not for everybody else to hear this. but I think we needed that little bit of like times just like, yeah, bro, come over and hang out. Like we're not even. Let's just like do something fun, or let's talk about what's going on.
And it doesn't need to be on camera or recorded. Like it's just for us. It's one of those conversations, and I think that goes a long way for this, because if we got like there, I feel like we got to a point where maybe neither one of us was coming across with what we actually wanted to say, because it was hard to be like what is for the show and what is not for the show, and it became a little bit confusing. So for us to be able to step back now, we can come at it and be a little bit more real, because like we're real about the conversation that we have off camera, and like that's just for us, and then we can like bring that over to this when we do an episode, because like either it's something that we talked about in the past that me and you have already had the conversation about, or like we just know that this is the space for it, rather than like something for me and you just to be talking about like while we're getting something to eat or like going for a hike or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Hanging out with the dogs, like and just kind of like what level of transparency. And I think that like I have the same struggle with stand up in terms of like how much do I want it to overlap, and with anything, like what's the right amount for me to just like have behind closed doors, and what's like kind of like the right amount to bring to here, because we know that the more personal we get, how much that helps people. That seems to be the biggest like feedback that we get.
Yeah, it's always very it's always nice when people are just like, I like how open you were like talking about this like on the show. Like the fact that you guys have those conversations is like important for other people to hear, because like maybe you don't want to have those conversations with your friends, but like for us it's helped. So
we know with what we've been through, it's necessary. We know that it's like you have to. I was just talking to, shout out Old Docket Coffee House, to Vic. Always, you got the shirt on.
Yeah.
We were talking about effort when I stopped by to pick up coffee, which is that like kind of like anything that is kind of worth having that is meaningful is going to require a certain amount of effort. Like, as much as we enjoy this podcast, it's nothing without us showing up. And it's also nothing without us showing up on the days where we have to do stuff for it that has nothing to do with recording. And we have to show up as friends to each other. That it doesn't just kind of like come naturally. There is a certain amount of chemistry for sure, but you have to like tell yourself that I know that putting in the effort to this is meaningful.
Yeah. So, like we said at the beginning of that, a lot more podcasts is coming for you guys. We have a lot more to talk about, and we're not going to stop doing what we're doing, So, I think that's kind of a good segue. So, this is episode 30. We're now both pretty into our 30s. So, what's
basically 32 next month.
Yeah, man.
Basically. And by the time this episode comes out,
32 is a weird number. Maybe it'll be a good one for you. I feel like I'm waiting on 33.
It's the temperature number. It's the weather number. It's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. 0 degrees Celsius. Now. In Europe, I'm zero. If you convert my age to Celsius.
So, being that it's episode 30, what is something, I was thinking about this before, what's something that you're trying to do now that you're in your 30s that you didn't do before when you were in your 20s, but like not just like doing stand-up or like trying something new, something that you've been doing for yourself along your like wellness journey?
Okay. I don't know if it's like a specific thing, but I guess it's just more of like awareness and like what's affecting me. And like, I guess like maybe it's just like looking inward more versus like, and I'm by no means am I going to say that it's, like I've solved it, I figured it out. But when you're feeling a certain way or when something's bothering you, noticing how you deal with it and noticing how you kind of get back to yourself and kind of like don't overthink yourself into a kind of like a sinkhole that never ends of what could possibly happen and being like, well, okay, what can I control? What can I not? And that's something that like, it's like, it's kind of, it's knowing that well, like, and I, like, it's not even being completely open and saying that like, you know, like if you're struggling with something, are you going out and drinking because that's, or are you not doing the things that you know are good for you creatively or personally because of something that's, you know. When I was on the way over here, I was thinking about how, like, as you get older, you kind of have to learn to have these other dimensions. And that when, you know, maybe you don't feel as creative as you want to, or you don't feel as open as you want to, or maybe you don't feel like you're multifaceted. So, like, if maybe, like, your career isn't where you want it to be, there's still other areas. Like, you shouldn't let that affect the fact that there's other things that you can work on, whether it's your relationships or your creative pursuits, or maybe a side hustle that brings you more meaning. To just, like, not get caught up in that one-dimensional aspect.
Like, this isn't going well, so nothing else can
exactly,
go.
Yeah. And like, being completely open about the podcast, too, and being like, it's okay, like, maybe we took a month or two off, or didn't do much in a month or two, because other areas needed attention so that we could come back to this fresh. It's just being aware of that, like, you're not defined by maybe the thing that you expect more from. And it's not, like, so one-sided as to, well, if this area isn't going well, that means the other 4 or 5 areas that maybe are meaningful to you. It doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It's just a sign to put more into that and try to figure out that balance versus being obsessed with the fact that this particular area isn't going well.
Good answer.
Thanks. How about you? I mean, what do you think is? I mean, that is something that you've covered on this podcast a lot. But, like, because just being 30, a lot changed for you, like, specifically. So, what would you say is what's the thing that? Because I would imagine that as you build new habits, some of them maybe get tiresome, and maybe you start to enjoy some of them. So, what's, like, your favorite thing that you've picked up that still kind of feels like the first time you did it? Like, is it meditation? Is it?
I think
is it reading? Whatever. What is it? This pot? Like, you know, like what?
I think one of the things that separates me now in my 30s from my 20s is, like you said, awareness. But I think for me, with meditation, taking that into the day-to-day and working on that has been something that I've been consistent about, and I try to do a lot more now. Just when I'm in a conversation with somebody, or I'm, like, in day-to-day life, just being like, take a deep, like, it doesn't have to be noticeable, it doesn't have to interrupt a conversation or anything, but just, like, being mindful of, like, am I fully listening right now? Like, if thoughts are in my head, like, okay, I notice them, but just, like, keep listening, like, and not talking. I think doing this podcast with you has helped a lot, because it's like you got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you listen twice as much as you talk. And at the beginning, that was, like, something that we went back and forth on all the time.
It was a struggle for both of us. Yeah.
And you look at it now and how far it's come, and I think that's patience, being patient with yourself. Like, okay, I'm working on it, and I try and do that, but, like, just even more than patience, being like, when I'm having a conversation with, like, my partner. I didn't know if I wanted to go with person or partner. When I'm having conversations with her, like, not. I have a tendency to be defensive, and I can, like, snap a little quick. You know that more than most people, and I think that's something that's definitely changed with me. But I still catch myself sometimes, and I'm like, just learning to just listen all the way through before responding. Because, like, you gave me that Urban Meyer book when we were, like, in our early 20s for Christmas one year.
I was still in college because I had it shipped here.
Yeah, and
so it had to be. That's at least almost 10 years ago.
I read that book a couple times, but there was always something that I took with me that he always talked about when he was coaching, and it was like, reaction is, like, something that comes from that from a situation and the outcome of the situation, or you were just talking about how you respond to things. And like for me, I kind of still remember that. Like it's a chapter of that book that like I can like still picture in my head, like reading it in the way the page was laid out, because like I think that stuck with me then, and it definitely wasn't at the forefront, but now like I do think about that a lot, like when I'm having a conversation with somebody, or if I feel a little bit uncomfortable in a situation, just being like, let's not overreact right here in the moment. Let's just take this in for a second and be like, just be content. Of contentedness is something that I've been saying. I'm grateful
I don't know
for
if that's a word.
morning.
I don't know if that's a word.
Contentness.
Yeah, there you
know
go.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I
like contentedness better, honestly.
I'm just trying to be like content and letting things happen. I think it's the fact that I read so much about Taoism. That's why, because I mean I read that book every single morning for as long as I've had it. I read a verse out of it every day. So just trying to implement that stuff, you know.
Yeah, I mean, what you said, I think is similar almost to what I said in a different way, which is that your reaction is always within your control. You have every single option you don't have every single option, but you have the ability in every situation to look at it and say, I don't have control over what happens to me, and whether that's the line at the bank or maybe a tough conversation to have, you always have the option to not like get triggered or feed into the instinct. Like you're lying to yourself if you're saying that. You hear a lot of times conversations, and we're all guilty of it, myself very much included, which is somebody did this to me or this happened, and then I had no choice but to react like negative way that escalated the situation or made it worse or wasn't healthy. And you always have that option, right? Like that sounds frustrating, but in a way it's very freeing, because it's like you have the option to not get upset. Always. Is that always the option that you take? Probably not. None of us are perfect as human beings. You're going to get angry about things. You're going to get upset with your partner. You're going to, like, those things are going to happen. But reeling yourself in and being like, I have the power for this little thing to not ruin my day. And I have the option for this conversation to not escalate to 1,000,000 just because I want to be defensive in this moment.
I was listening to Evan Britton the other day. He had this guy Gary Jones on the podcast, and he said something that stuck with me, and it was life isn't happening to you, it's responding to you. And I took that into account, just like the reactionary response that you have. And I'm also reading The Body Keeps the Score. It's about trauma in the mind body, and so a lot sometimes I'm trying a little bit more, I feel like lately, when something does happen and I feel like I'm getting almost triggered, like I'm getting like worked up or something.
It happens in parts of your body, I feel like, right?
I'm trying to be like, where's this coming from?
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to feel where it is in my body, and like trying to think of like what's this stem from? Like we had a conversation the other day, and maybe I reacted a little bit like to like give me space right away. Like the way I could have just been like, hey, I need a minute. And like we talked about this actually, like, hey, I need a minute. Let me just have space, rather than trying to be like, can we talk and fix this right now? Because she's very much like, I don't want to not talk. I want to like work through it. And I'm cool with that. And I'm trying to learn to get better at it. But at the same time, it's like, this is how I react. And it's still a new relationship. So we're still learning habits about each other. But like, that's how I am. Like kind of I need a little bit of space to cool down. But the way I said it and the tone of what I said it, and noticing like, okay, that wasn't the right response, but why'd you respond that way? And then being able to communicate that to her, like, we'll figure out how, like, when I'm getting frustrated, to tell you that I'm getting frustrated without yelling at you, so you feel comfortable that we're going to talk later and I can have space at the moment.
Yeah. I think that's what we're talking about, is like respect and figuring out what works for both of you. Like that, we're talking about effort. It's kind of just like, do you want to put in the work to have the possibility of something being more meaningful? Or do you kind of just want to phone it in and say, like, this is who I am if you can't? Yeah. You know, and that I think is another big part of as you get older. Like, what is it that you're looking for? Like, we're both old enough and been through enough of these kinds of experiences to know that it doesn't just magically happen. And you have to be honest with yourselves. You have to be honest with the other person, and you have to just like you have to give them the respect of being open about what you're feeling if you expect to get that back. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
And I think it's a combination of you're always learning about yourself, but then also trying to understand, see the other person's point of view. It's not easy. None of these things, like anybody who's together for a long time knows. We had somebody at the open mic who was just like, yeah, we got married like immediately. Still together 7 years later. I don't know. Like, I don't think it's necessary. I think it's just a willingness to make an agreement of we're a team, but you got to bring kind of like the 50%. It's never 50-50 ultimately, but you know what I mean? Like, you got to bring me that for me to bring that. And to kind of, when we're talking about respect, a lot of it is trust too, right? To trust that you can be yourself, figure out what's going on in that moment. And then also give that person space to be themselves and understand that just because this is how I receive love or this is how I get upset doesn't mean that it's their responsibility to just fix it.
Yeah, a lot of growing up, you know.
It's hard. I don't know.
I think a big part of it too is like doing that self work, because like we always talk about with this, like if we're not cool with what's going on with us, like individually, and then like when we're together, like it's hard to bring a realistic conversation to this without it feeling like forced or kind of just like not talking a lot, you know what I mean? Like
whatever,
we get off topic and stuff, but like it's just being able to do the work and, like you said, like being aware of what's going on with yourself and taking the time to work on that so you can show up for whatever it is. And I think, like I said, it's me I'm trying to work on why am I like this?
You know? Asking yourself why.
Yeah.
It's not
sometimes it's a rough conversation to have.
Well, yeah, and but I think ultimately what we end up talking about is kind of like not staying in that cycle and saying, like, taking responsibility for the fact of, okay, like maybe 100 times in my life I've responded in this way, but that doesn't mean that tomorrow I have to wake up like, and I'm not by any means saying it's easy and that you just like, but also it's giving yourself that space to evolve and know too that like anything, I mean, what we're talking about right now is new relationships, but like knowing that over time that person is going to change just like you are. And that sometimes things work, sometimes things don't, or you need to, am I putting in enough effort? You need to be honest. The only way that I think a relationship works is if you're both honest with yourself. You can bring that to the table, right?
Yeah.
Like what do you have if not honesty and trust? So kind of all that exciting, fun things that they call it the honeymoon phase, you know. Like we've both been down a road to know that that's not where life exists the majority of the time. And it's like, do you want to put the effort in or not? Do you want to build trust, or do you want to kind of just phone it in? So like that's and it's like, I think kind of what we're talking about is knowing what you want. And knowing, like, do I want to be in a relationship that's like chaotic and all over the place, and we're sitting around wondering what the other person is thinking, versus coming to an agreement that I'm not going to leave you in the dark and neither am I. And I think we've talked about it before. It's just like sitting down and having important conversations is the best way to do that and the best way to be honest with yourself. Right?
So
I'm just spitballing.
So how is now when you have to have an important conversation different than when you were in your 20s? Because for me,
go ahead.
I'll be very forthright. I just ran away.
like physically ran away, right?
Yeah, sprinted.
Yeah. That's a really good question. Because I think about it like in some ways like I think that I get the same feeling about them, but with enough kind of experience in doing that, I've learned that it's necessary, and you may not want to have it, and I think that not wanting to have that probably came from just me not wanting to be honest with myself, and whether that was about being how negative something is or how positive something is. But can you kind of just like remove yourself? Because I feel like in today's society, everything just feels so immediate. So it's like if you haven't talked for one day, or if you're in a fight right now, that feels like the only thing that exists. And I feel like I've at least learned to be a little bit honest with myself that I may not want to do this, the other person may not want to do this, whether it's your boss or your friend or your partner, whatever it is. But we're not going to make progress, and it's like building a muscle. It's like anything. It's just like, and by bringing that to the forefront and knowing how well, how we're all human, so it doesn't have to be this complicated. So it's kind of it's to me it's just like that muscle comes from doing the things that I know I need to do for myself in order to be proud of myself the next day and the next day and the next day. And it's like, I think that the biggest difference for me now is that I'm just not okay with sitting in that space of, oh, well, we'll figure it out tomorrow, and then we'll figure it out next week, and then we'll just keep kind of repeating this cycle. I'm just not okay with that anymore. And you have to, sometimes if you want what you want, you have to just like take it versus kind of like sitting back and being like, oh, I don't have any control over this. I'm just going to let this sit around in limbo for days, and then they become weeks, and then months. And then you're unhappy, and you're just like, well, I wasn't honest with myself. And I wasn't honest with you, or whatever the scenario is.
Yeah.
I think an honesty with yourself kind of builds, like if you're not lying to yourself, I can be honest with you.
Yeah.
I can be honest with my partner. I can be honest with, whether it's your coworkers or
whoever it may be.
Whoever it may be, your family, your friends, whatever it is.
What are if you think back to what was important to you in your 20s, and you took the three most important things, like three things you believe were going to be the most important, and then you look at what are the three most things you think are important right now, how are they different?
Oh, wow. I would say that I spent a lot of my 20s, like, probably number one is just, like, caring what other people think. Or actually, I could probably be more specific in caring about the kind of external, superficial perception of yourself versus kind of just, like, knowing who you are and being okay in that space. Like if a stranger a stranger tells me like, oh, like you're not a good friend, from the outside looking in, knowing that like I live in this space now and I'm a good friend. So like, I mean, that's probably number one, is just like stop caring about like how popular you are, how many followers you have, or what kind of like your life looks like to the masses of people. And I feel like that's why now I'm more okay with putting this podcast out or doing stand-up and being like, if what I do doesn't connect with somebody, that's okay. I'm not gonna like be everybody's favorite. I have to put like some type of like, I don't know if partying is the right word, or having a good time. That definitely is something that like I equated with like having a good life, you know, is like how late are you staying out? How many friends do you have? How many bars did you go to last night? Or how much of X, Y, or Z did you consume? So that's definitely up there. Huh. Well. I think those are two solid answers. I could probably branch one off and make it a third one. I don't know, like what the.
So what would it be for you now?
Now it would like now to me, like I would have to say that like just realizing how like the close relationships are the things that matter the most. Like that's how I would like the only people whose opinions you really care about are the people who have your best interest in mind. And knowing that kind of connects with what you want as a person. And I would definitely have to also put up there, like, just taking care of myself. And that doesn't mean that, like, I have this amazing routine that is perfect, that I go to the gym every day, or I struggle with the basic small habits. But just kind of, like, knowing that I can always come back to that. And knowing that, like, nobody's ever sat down and, like, gave themselves a little self-care or self-love and walked away from it and been like, that was a waste of time.
Yeah.
And number 3, I'm just going to say the puppy because
yeah,
she's at the shout out to Eleanor. Yeah. That's, like, right now, at the stage that I'm at, like, she has to be a priority for, like, me realizing that and putting that as such a important thing. Like, I was saying earlier this morning how, like, virtually every day, and it's changed a lot, is waking up in the morning and making that the priority of just like either going on like a 3-mile walk or like just taking her to the park and playing around, just to like tire her out and get some of that energy out, has made other aspects of my life a lot easier. Yeah. You know, like to not come home to stuff being chewed up. And she's also getting older and learning things. But I realized that if I prioritize this early, this allows my life to kind of like open up a little bit, because that's a main responsibility. But I feel like that then carries over into smaller things. That like if I can take an hour and a half to go on a walk or do that, taking 10 minutes to meditate or to journal or to write or whatever it might be, feels like a treat, because it's just like you took care of your responsibilities, you did X, Y, and Z. Your turn. I mean, I would think that
so
your priorities were similar to mine, considering how close we were.
Yeah, I think in my 20s, my biggest priority was definitely like perception from other people, what people thought of me.
I think we're all on that.
And who I was. I think the second biggest thing was how desirable I was. You know, like just...
That's very vulnerable of you.
Like wanting other people's attention and affection and how important that was to me. Mm-hmm. And like, I couldn't just like be alone.
Would you say that like just in terms of especially being in a restaurant and like being the guy, you know what I mean? We talk about that. Would you say that it's something that like you've learned to have more quality versus quantity?
I think I'll tell you in a second when I get to the 3 that are important. The third one was definitely...
this is like, stop interrupting me, bro.
The third
was very mature of you.
The third one was probably what my perception, what I thought successful was.
Oh,
and my successful.
That's a good one.
And if other people thought I was successful, a lot of them do center around
your
external,
image.
just like thinking of like, what do other people think of me? So I guess they're all three tied together, but like those are the three things now. Like I don't have to be any kind of way. I can just be me. I don't need anybody's approval of me, or like I don't, you know what I mean? And then what I think of success is completely different now. But I'd say that the three most important things to me now are probably my close relationships, like my relationships with like you, my other close friends, definitely with my family, because that has changed so much. And then like the effort that I put into the relationship that I have now. And then I would say number 2 is spirituality. Like, because without finding that and getting some sort of something to believe in, that just
it's kind of like a North Star.
Yeah, that's like I kind of use for guidance, and just like trying to just be in balance and like let life happen, and everything will happen the way it's supposed to, because that's how Taoism is. And then the third is my relationship to myself. Actually, this is number 1. And that's my relationship to myself.
But the reason that I would probably say that if that's number 1, that is what has allowed you to develop those other things. Like you can't. It's just like, it's cliche, but it's just like you cannot ever like have good relationships and kind of like be purposeful and meaningful if you don't have a good relationship with your sense of self. And it's something you're always working on, you're always cultivating, and I will be till the day I die, just like you will. It's never like a complete job, but carving out that time to like do it for yourself.
I mean, like everything was always about those 3 things when I was in my 20s. It was like, what am I doing to make one of these 3 things like happen for me, or to receive what I wanted at that time? And now it's like, now in my 30s, it's just very much like every morning, like my routine's not perfect either. Like I miss stuff all the time, like things change. And like if I'm busy, like I hurry through it. I might not always be as present as I should be, but I'm okay with that, because I know that I take the time every day to do that, and that increases my relationship with myself, to be like, hey, you might have only sat for 20 minutes today when you meditated, but like, and your head might have been all over the place, but you did it, and you're going to do it again tomorrow, and maybe tomorrow will be like, there's no perfect meditation, but like maybe it'll be closer, whatever that expectation is.
Yeah, like that's probably a good one to say. About the difference between is just like, I feel like when you look back on it, like really, like just like trying to be honest with yourself, like I look back at my 20s and I'm like, when did I like stop to take a moment and think about why why this was more important to me than this was. And I think that makes it so much more valuable when you get to this point now. Is it just gets a little bit easier to put that effort into yourself, and knowing that you can't make anybody else do anything or be what you want them to be, but you always have that ability to turn back and look inward. And it's like anything; it's a muscle that you have to stretch. It doesn't happen overnight. Nobody just kind of went about their day willy-nilly, interacting with other people and just not taking time to be like, I am this. Like, we're all human, but at the same time, I'm not responsible for anybody else's. Like, it's not my responsibility today to fix the world, but I do have control over how I react to all these things. You're smirking, what do you want to make?
I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, how I know I'm different than in my 20s? In my 20s, I would have never let anybody know that I love wrestling.
That's what you're thinking about?
Yeah. I would have taken that to the grave. And it's like, now, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm sure there's people that are going to be like, wow. What a loser. But, like, who cares? Because that brings me, like, for 2.5 hours on Monday night and for 2 hours on Friday night, I'm like, I'm chilling. Like, I'm having a great time. Yeah. And it brings me back to when I was a kid, when I was happiest.
But that also, I think, comes from, like the idea of just, like, giving yourself space to be multifaceted and that in turn like allows you to be like, somebody might say something at the bar or when I'm out or that I hear, whatever it is, that, you know, you hear people all the time say something like, oh, like, I would never date a person that does this. That's like one thing, you know? Or I would, you know, I could never be friends with somebody who does this. Mm-hmm. But then as you encounter more like people in your life and you do, it's like, oh, like that doesn't like, I probably would look back and be like, in my 20s and say, like, I could never be close friends with somebody who loved wrestling as much as you do, you know, because I just don't give a fuck about it. I don't. And that's okay. But then I give you a little space to be that. And then I realized, you know what, sometimes this is a little cool. And like, we can take an hour or two and play WWE or whatever. Yeah. You know, and it's not, it doesn't, you don't have to just be like,
so fixated.
Put yourself in a box.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? That's an old episode title, right?
Yeah.
And then not putting yourself in a box allows you to not put other people in a box.
Exactly. 100%.
Be like, oh, I could never hang out with somebody who had a hairless dog. Yeah. But then, like, maybe meet like the nicest person ever who has a hairless dog. No, that was kind of short-sighted of me.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good one.
Right? I don't know. Like, that just popped into my head like a random thing. You know? I don't know.
It's such a weird thing to talk about, but like at the same time, it's like you can see the growth within yourself. When I'm walking around the house, and I'm like, yeah, like just doing like WWE call outs, and I'm like, I don't care. Like nobody's judging me, and if they are, like.
What?
Something hit you at the rock bottom when you were a kid.
Yeah, no, but yeah, sure. That just like that was what was missing from my childhood, right? Yeah. I did enjoy the wrestling ice cream bars though.
Oh, the Stone Cold Steve Austin
with the motherfucking like cookie outer thing.
Yeah, which is the print of like a wrestler. It was always Stone Cold.
That shit had to have like asbestos as the ink though, right?
Oh, like how they get the SpongeBob one with all those colors,
right? Oh, that's a good. I mean, yeah, we're going down an interesting road here.
Yeah, man.
These don't have Red 40 in it, does it? This got Red 40 in it?
I
don't know what's in Red 41 though.
That's something in my 30s that like was definitely different in my 20s. Like I watch what I eat, and especially now.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's actually the third that has changed.
Diet.
I'm mindful about the money I spend at restaurants.
Oh, 100%. Bro, shitty restaurants are expensive now.
Yeah.
Like, the inflation has caused, like, bad restaurants to be able to charge, like, $18 for a burger that came out not the temperature you ordered it, and, like, some soggy fries. Think about it.
It's a sad world that we live in.
Yeah.
This is why you just gotta, like, you gotta keep putting that hard hat on. You gotta keep going for it.
Just keep going.
You gotta be, being mindful of what you consume and not just kind of like mindlessly. Like that's actually something I'd like to talk about, which is that we've visited this many times, but like the more that I consume alcohol, the more I'm like, why do I do this?
We have been having this conversation for a long time.
Yeah. And I was like, not this most recent one, but the open mic before that, I had a considerable amount of alcohol. And I think I just was honest with the fact of like, my perception of what's happening here needs to be not 90% or 80%. It needs to be 100.
Mm-hmm. Did you drink on Monday?
I did, but not until after the show was over.
Progress.
Yeah, I did. And I was like, not until like the last person has gone up, and that was I had 1%.
Yeah.
Sleep recovery.
Even though so you got wasted after.
I didn't. No, I didn't. Yeah, but I think that like honestly, my tolerance might be getting down. Like just because like I just don't do it as much as I used to. And I think that I'm fucking 24 and can just consume whatever. And that kind of just brings back to the same thing, which is that like, okay, I'm I can stay out late tonight, I can hang out with my friends, but it's not necessarily necessary for me to have a drink or to do X, Y, and Z to have a good time. Because then, like, maybe tomorrow I'm going to wake up. It's a domino.
Yeah.
And maybe tomorrow I'm not going to wake up at like 8 or 8:30, 9 o'clock, which is usually the time I wake up on a normal day, maybe earlier. And I'm not going to want to go to the park. And maybe I'll skip that. And then maybe I start to feel like, oh, well, you didn't do that, so now you can't do the next thing that you would do. And it's just a domino effect, and I'm just like, believe it or not, I was watching there's a new documentary out on HBO about Pete Rose.
Okay. No,
Stick with me.
I know you like
Stick
baseball.
Stick with me. Yeah.
You like history
No.
stuff, so.
Yeah, but it's like, why would you bring up a gambling addict at this moment? But he was like, I never drank because I realized that tomorrow I'd feel better than you, and I'd be a step ahead. And that was an easy way to not do that, and it's like you like, that's a great example of like, I can't, like, being multifaceted of like, you can admire the hustle and intensity and dedication of Pete Rose without being like, he's you know what I mean? That's like, and recognizing that everybody is multifaceted and has multiple dimensions, and that you can, but like, that's probably a big part of his success.
Yeah,
I don't know, but then there's people.
He had a clear mind, so he knew what team was going to win.
Yeah, and like, I also watched it too, and I'm like, those motherfuckers were good, bro.
Yeah,
that team was good, like that he played on. But coming back to, which is like, there's, when you talk about like what your priorities are, and realizing that my priority no longer is to just get fucked up and have a good time. And that there's things bigger than that, and that, like, maybe in the meantime you have to, it's okay to have a good time, it's all right, like, but just kind of like doing yourself that future favor, and it's just kind of like something to build upon when like that self-awareness of knowing that this habit isn't kind of like align with what I want to be for the rest of my life and where I'm headed, and there's changes that are being made, and maybe that just doesn't like line up with it anymore, and like, I don't you know, me and you talk about this very often off the podcast, but I think the thing that I really connected with was when I realized, like, oh, okay, this could change the like path of my career or what I want to do, or I could ruin maybe a relationship with somebody, anybody, because I was prioritizing kind of like the pleasure of this moment versus kind of like the small changes long term that eventually add up, and you wake up and you say, wow.
Yeah, man.
Like, I did that today. I was looking through my voice memos, and there was a point in there where there was nothing in there. And now there's like at least like 30 or so, and I don't always remember to record myself. There's like 30 or so recordings of me doing stand-up. And I could have never, ever pictured that at the beginning of this year. But knowing that a part of me has had to reprioritize and restack, like, that to me is, at least very much in this stage of my life, is the self-care and the self-love. It's just like doing that thing for yourself, and knowing that when you kind of knowing full well that doing that thing allows you to find purpose in other areas, because you're doing something that's for you, that brings you joy, that's creative, and not like feeling bad for yourself because you took that time for yourself and didn't pour it into other people or other things that aren't as like, I keep saying the word meaningful. I feel like that's something I've said mad times. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, man. Where are we at?
As far as time goes,
yeah.
I can't see a time on this, but I could. I can tell you how many measures we're at.
Yeah, I don't know that.
We're at 1,494 measures.
Well, how are you feeling?
I feel good, man. I mean, what is there something that's been on your mind that you want to talk about, that you want to bring to the podcast? Like,
yeah, I think I'm pretty good for today, man. We're gonna be doing this a lot more, so I can confidently say that we don't have to go for an hour and 10 minutes for me to feel like we did enough. Like,
I think I'm. You want to guess how long we've been going? Like, I think that
we're always the same time, so I'm gonna say that this is probably like 58 minutes to an hour and 10.
Yeah, I was gonna set the line at an hour.
Yeah, we're probably.
I was gonna say we were over.
If you're still listening, comment pineapples on Spotify or wherever you're listening to.
No, but that is something we can, because we were talking about maybe just like real quick, bringing like guests back and doing like new fun things outside of this podcast. Do you have any like ideas of maybe like not necessarily a specific person, but like the type of people that because we haven't had a guest since Brian, and that was like February, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think me and you are both very open to having a conversation about anything, as long as we can at some point direct it back to like whoever it may be, their journey into like wellness or taking care of their mental health. Like, as long as it has some semblance to that and we can bring that into the conversation. If you want to talk, we'll talk, you know, like, so if there's people out there that want to say something, like, or want to have a conversation similar to what you've heard for the last 30 episodes of like us talking about our lives and our journeys, we're always open to it. Like, reach out. Well, if it's possible to set something up, we will. Sometimes interests don't align, and that's okay. Like, but we are open to having anybody. So
yeah, I think the easiest way to put it into a category is we're open to having anybody who kind of would give us a little bit of a new perspective on something.
And they're willing to be vulnerable, because this isn't for everybody.
Yeah,
we reach out to people that don't want to have conversations like that. So I get it.
That's a good point, and there's really nothing at all wrong with us saying that that's what this is.
Yeah.
And that we kind of expect just a certain amount of like if in any way are a fan of this podcast, then you have to be a fan of people being vulnerable.
Yeah, of opening up. So.
Yeah, so why would we bring somebody on who wants to talk about I guess like superficial stuff?
Yeah,
I mean, we have no problem with fucking around, but that's never gonna be the whole episode, right?
Yeah,
we always have to like dig a little bit deeper. And that's like I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with us saying that that's the
line.
The energy that we're putting out there that we want to come back. Because I certainly don't want to attract kind of like that. You know, it's funny though, because like sometimes I watch those podcasts, not like. The full episodes, but you see the ones where people like rank like fast food restaurants.
Oh yeah,
and I just get sucked into it. Like, I love those dudes. What are the two like twin brothers?
Oh, I don't know if I've seen them, but have you seen? There's a kid
on
Instagram and TikTok that has just been ranking the top 1,000 things. And it's just so funny because like
he makes it as he goes.
Yeah, it's like 10 things every day, and it's just but he started at 1,000, so the rankings are just like the item that he puts at whatever number can be so all over the place. Like one of them was like frogs, just like ranked where
he's just coming up with random. Yeah,
so I can't wait till we get down to that shit. Like that is intriguing. That draws people in.
That's funny, yeah.
And he started at a good number, so by the time he gets down to the top 10 things, people are gonna be like, "What the fuck are they?"
Yeah, you have to keep making them better.
Yeah, there's some random shit in there. Yeah, I'll show you.
Well, there's I don't know.
I would be open to having a person like that on the podcast if they explain to us how did you figure out this was your thing and this is what you wanted to do.
No, it's not that. It's that I don't even know, because we also like fuck. If you go back and look at our episodes, like you'll find conversations that me and you had that are so fucking dumb.
Yeah.
That like make like oh yeah, this is a podcast about bettering yourself, but like I don't even know what like what did we even talk about, you know? But that is like, it's okay to have that, but then it's also okay to be like, this is like the ultimate goal and purpose of this is to like make you discover something new about yourself or encourage you to be better or whatever it might be. But I think that that's something that, just to kind of like wrap it all up, and I took myself a lot less seriously when I was in my 20s too. And I'd like to get back to that.
Yeah.
You know?
I think somewhere around like 27, you start getting like way too serious with yourself.
Yeah, and you start thinking I need to have a wife and kids and a house, or
X, Y, and Z.
Or I need to be this far along in my career, or whatever. And as you kind of get older, it's natural for that to become something that you think about more and more, especially if it's all around you and you see, you make that comparison of, well, that person has a house, or that person has this thing that is considered to be meaningful, but like that doesn't mean like it's okay to be kind of like figuring these things out now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that comes into play with like taking yourself seriously. And not being like, this is the kind of person I am, and this is what I do, and if you got a problem with that, you know, I don't know, just like, I kind of just keep I try to bring myself back to that when I feel like you have that feeling that it's the end of the world, because you don't feel far enough along, or this thing that you thought was going to go really well isn't where it needs to be.
Yeah. I think, like I said before, just like when we were talking, just reaction is a big thing. And just being mindful of your reaction. Life isn't happening to you. Life is responding to you. Respond appropriately. Think about it for a second. Maybe take a breath. Don't jump off the deep end. I mean, unless that's your thing. It's something, sometimes you do have to jump off the deep end, but do it mindfully.
Yeah, I mean,
Just a glitch? The fuck was that?
No, I feel like that was just funny. Like, if you play, I don't know exactly what you said, but you were just like, you don't have to jump into the deep end, but also jump into the deep end. But think about it before you do it.
It's a paradox.
Well, yeah, that's a good
paradox.
That's a good way. That we have to put. Paradox has to be in the title of this episode in some way. Life is a paradox. Like, we're not. So everything makes sense, but also doesn't make any sense at all at the same time.
Lao style.
Yeah. What did Sun Tzu say? It's Sun Tzu.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty much a wrap here. Episode 30. We did it.
Episode 30.
30 in a year. Crazy. We'll be back with some more stuff. And there's more stuff coming.
Yeah, keep listening. Thank you.
Thanks to everybody who's listening. Shout out Old Dog Coffee. And
they did fuel the.
Yeah, this podcast is sponsored by that today. And then the sponsor that'll be at the beginning of this.
That's still, we still hold. Shout out to Will. We haven't like said it on the mics because we have the commercial a while, but still, thanks, Will. We love you. Will, if you listen this far in, I know that you have a pregnant wife and a business to run, so I'm sure you have no time for this podcast. But if you got this far, message me and say,
I got this far.
I got this far.